다디, 다 공부로도 기재수 당वे, 아니 띵중게 따왔대, 양탁과, 만날와, 시부지게 짜청부지래, 제제제로부지게, 아, 송, 송제, 엔지 제수다, 디기 제수 제로부지 가르쳐 송열스도, 제장가, 다 별이 내리, 자리 내리, 아니, 동반이기 따왔는 때나 파원도 전배, 아니, 아, 베나, 합이 냠샤 이시기 당하라는 좀 와서는 곰 잡잡잡잡잡잡 전담대발에 아직 전담대발 들려야 해냐발 사죠 곰 잡잡은 되잖아 아니 코랑경 유 코랑경에 지에 매봐도 통원도 전배 되는 거로 지니 아 알아는 좀 와서는 유 락체 유디 매봐 차네 아니 유 매도 전배 유진디에 매봐 차বে 손로 보지 드레지간의 유된 유미 유진 이거 매버 갈라도스타 차도에지 늦은데 아니 딘디질라다 아 아주게 아 파괴 이시 세치 딘디 세점이 망보지 총도와 별의 내 총도 자갈의 총도 세상 딘디 늦은데 저런 붙이게 세상 공부로 두고 슝 딘디지 마다베이나 딘디게 삼로 코야다 딘디게 랑과 초선로에 그냥가 친구지 늦은데 아니 저런 붙이게 빼들려야 아 민민 민민 끝이 믹셀도 드베 되는 마도 아니 지 가서 그래 어 민민 끝이 믹 마트에 계제 말했어 믹 매버스에 계제 말다스 뭐데 인도자베 된대기 밥이 이실이야 아니 가서 그래 밥이 이실 유요 말했지 꼬르와 꼬와 답게 아니 별라 양도 야간알로 정도 한 딘데게 람데 딘데지 간로 만롱을라 공부 루두기 때나 밥에 오메 따와들라 로베이나 한 랑가 딘데지 간 나바지 말레베게 딩츠 딘데 요레스 어딘데지 갈라 안도와
Donc, pour les personnes qui sont là comme dans les suivants, il y a relativement par rapport à la vue, très important bien sûr d'avoir la focus, dans ce dire comme ça, il y a d'avoir bien sûr sa vie de manière complètement bien. Donc, c'est pourquoi, dans son commentaire, dit que, il y a, possible de certaines mentions qui veulent dire que lorsque nous arrivons dans l'égalité de la sagesse, il y a une égalité sur la vacuité, c'est un peu de méditation, c'est de méditation à la volonté aussi, encore, et au bout d'un moment, cette personne va rencontrer directement, percevoir directement l'outil, et certains disent que l'objet est totalement perdu. L'objet est totalement perdu, et s'il n'y a pas d'objet, il n'y a pas le possesseur d'objet non plus. Donc, ici, certains diront beaucoup plus dire cela, autour de cette égalité éducative là, finalement, il n'y a plus d'objet, plus de sujet, etc. Donc, on va prévenir cette déroute, cette manière, essaie de nous encourager à ne pas aller cette quand on dit l'objet, possesseur d'objet, ça pourrait être interprété de manière totalement incorrecte, mais c'est pourquoi il est nécessaire de comprendre complètement cette voie tracée, cette vue enseignée par.
Sorry, yeah, so the video crashed, and so the Rinpoche was mainly just talking about the way of following the mess. Disloying. Okay, I'll just translate that very briefly. So Rinpoche is talking about the in terms of understanding it's perfect, the perfectly understanding this view of dependent origination following Nagarjuna and J. Rinpoche states that there's a sort of discussion about whether when in determining this view of emptiness that in the Arya's meditative equipoise direct perception of emptiness, then whether some say that the sort of object of the meditative equipoise is lost, that there's no object to, and then even some state that the kind of subjective mind is also lost in that meditative equipoise. What we call, it can be called an exalted wisdom, or some people refer to as gnosis, that exalted wisdom. And so without understanding clearly about the explanation about about the qualities of this meditative equipoise, then the fact is not the fact that because there is many explanations within the Indian and even the Tibetan tradition of these the meditative equipoise, direct meditative equipoise of the Aryas not taking an object. But it's important to understand Nagarjuna's middle way in relationships in order to understand the details of this very clearly.
pigi tachigi karzawu da kaji mi shenpali ya dendrigi samlu le shas cheche yang ko hayon ton dewa ma yinba unye che na sambu tongpa kasi tarashuwe gizi chungpa na shi sambu tongpa nye tangpo kodi nye chila ya ani duja se yuwa ma ta karas pina nyingtian dili ya sum yung chudwa ta tangpo di tanda chedu chewe duja na shin cheche sambu tongpa nye ko ndo zambe simla kadi shivu chi 가디 용거에 좀 진디 녀바체나 가디 용거에 좀 진 카르레 슬라베나 다 단다 봐도 녀모야 카데 줘야 망보 지 탑시 망보 체네 니 녀모 라케마 다 녀모라 카데 샤베 텔야 조디 녀모게 자와 다도 좀 등진인디 딜라 카데 마쳐나 아니 녀모 커도 매버 쇠바 다랑 삼식이 내가 미게워지 마도 땐도 never도 깨야지래샤 세 레온도 좀be 신에 아니 다도 좀be 등진기 신유매바 매요 말이 스치제 뒤 코와담be sem나 가와게지 되는 연구설에 다니버디 아주 지금 성동반 얘기 따와디 때나 파원데 아니 저장하고 유 코란 영문에 매 세하당 아니 유디 요 말에 세야 돼 지부 지정 거지 아니 배 체달로 그냥 같이 요소래 다 단다디 따와디래 somebody 당기 시험나신 알아서 초와시라 매비 토네 지기 겨왕의 매기 지기 랜드로 위에 리디디 숙체다니 아니 매 마포체 아니 초와시라 만점이 토네야 대지 용부스래
So in relation to this idea that the objects of these meditative equipoises have no object, this is not a doubt that we should just have in relation to thinking about how these kind of philosophers or these kind of scholars who present things in this way. We actually need to look at it a little bit this in relation to ourselves, not just be surprised at other people having these kind of views, but also look at ourselves in relation to this. So when we talk about the first, people sort of hearing about emptiness for the first time, then there are sort of maybe we could break this into the three kinds of categories of reaction of the people who hear emptiness. And you may have some very what we'd call specific disciples, those who are specifically ready for the teaching. And when these kind of persons hear the teaching of emptiness, they have a tremendous joy. But this joy comes from a sort of background of understanding. It's not just a simple delight. It comes with a background of understanding that the problems stem from mental afflictions, and this teaching on emptiness will help them to challenge the mental afflictions. And that challenge takes place because they understand that the main root of the mental afflictions is the self-grasping, and therefore they understand that with developing this understanding of emptiness, that they will be able to sort of counteract or prove the sort of non-existence of the grasped object of the self-grasping. So they'll see through that. They'll see that the object of self-grasping is actually non-existent. So they have a joy in this. Then there are those who hear this teaching, but what they do is confuse something not existing from its own side. They think that something not existing from its own side and something not existing at all are the same thing, and then they fall into an extreme of nihilism. And then there are those who don't really sort of develop a strong feeling either way. So you have these three kinds of sort of reaction in people encountering emptiness.
아니 묘몰 하마 탐지 게 구글이 갱해를 시시 타제시 대인도 전에 얘기 나도 전에 등신디만 들비 합시지 최고야라 다디 지금 가르쳐 그래 대단 전당 오서 예배 로데 마곰발라 아니 디 세탑에 봐지 세명 예반이지 대단 남쟁기 리베 나로라 남쟁 리베 나라 다운도 전에 아니 고된 요레스 고된 예배 간 좀생 가르쳐서 전에 아니 수수기 단다 말한주기 녀모도 시제 깼는데야 돼 아니 대단 전당 오서 예배 로데 곰지 엔디 야 공바탐에도 펼치 딘지 로디 공바탐에도 패배 아니 제수 아니 또 녹음해 봐 녀몬디 추 녹음해 봐 짐바디 좀 녹음해 봐지 차가 갑텔라 아니 신에 대용구리스 가서 고된 톱그리스 그래서 디네 띵도 와면데 줄랑 객소시시로스 디네 띵도 와스 이제 띵도 매버 쇠토그리스 가능서는 규들라 객치네도 여러봐스 어딘지 남랭이 리고도 삼라지 땅의 터네 아니 가져라 다지 고된 주 두규 요소에 삼양게 라와들 레원도 삼베 다시네 아주 여기 탑셰드 귤러 객소 세시로 세도 점배 다객 뉴 당진기에 당진기에 다 객디 가르치고 버 세도 점배 하나 담에도 싫어 붙이고 나 담에도 싫어 되 아니 배cab이 냐지 땡체 당하라서 당예로 어디서 담에도 싫어 되 세상 공부로도 산재 좀 된들이야 아니 오마 자와 싫어 스케라 좀 쉬고 여바 되게 아니 배때 코랑 중디 뷰다고 쉬워지 요르다 배 예비 좀 전지 걸어서는 방법 중디기 되차제에 조디 아니 아 가서 그러다 책이 담에 주베리고도 스마송 되네 리우 삽랍지 니슈 패전 저주 봐도 아니 지게 담에 리아 아니 제바망 뻔나지 아니 타마들이야 니슈 패전 접든 버려 다 접든 들이야 아니 산제 좀 된들이야 되차제치 강에 투스니 손에 따와 탐제 방배치 담배 춘든제 고담철 차절로 쓰디 네 측제 단로네 배좀 된들 되바 최최 다 될 하고 되바 매버디 가라서는 따와 탐제 방배치르스 저랑기 지금 아주 마소네 레단 요모다 망부시 흐지 레레레레 마방치 자와 직방네 대다 탐제 방배 인상 따와 탐제 방배치르스 네가 저 그러와졌어들이 재상 따와 탐제 방배치르 된디기 담배 취해디 닝지 신비 상황 교르시 안절 땡스땡 나샤스 아니 고담철 차철로 고담을 전한래야 차지기 인스 안도 송로와 재상 다디 깜종 오마들이 너 재상 저 어디 총도 준비도 신에 다 다음에 배 따와들이 남산 겹수 시스 제저 라오 마임바 인년이야 다 매시베 다 매단데네 삼로 야고지 코고도 은 재상 공부로 두고 슝 된대지 여버디 알로라다 아주 단다 지름 붙이기 송구리 단다 반년다 외터베기 아래 가져 막아고네 가져 가르까 하고 그래 하고 그러마도 그냥 가야지 축체단하니 단위를 넣어두지 흉단하니 짐벌 내고 말했어 어디기 당아주디 가정 건전 노스를 들어 봐
So here, in terms of meditating, needing to here is going to encounter the topic of the meditating and the selflessness and the importance of doing it. And one of the main reasons for the selflessness of all phenomena, in fact, and the main reason for this is that if we're not able to tame the grasping that clings to a self, a non-existent self, then we are not able to sort of tame. If we're not able to tame that grasping, then of course from that stem out all the other range of mental afflictions. So, and the only way to prevent those mental afflictions from arising is to be able to tame and eliminate this self-grasping, and so therefore we need to search for methods to be able to tame that self-grasping. And the only thing, and if that self-grasping is there, then it's sure that it's absolutely sure that the mental afflictions will definitely arise. So we need to look for and what we need to search for is a mind that engages with this object in direct opposition to the way that the self-grasping does. So we need to have the ascertainment, the understanding within ourselves that there's absolutely no chance of getting rid of all of the mental afflictions and grasping unless we have this kind of mind. And this topic comes up in Dharmakirti's commentary on valid cognition, where he talks, particularly in terms of talks about the arisal of the mental afflictions, but then he comes up in the discussion of the proving the existence of the truth of cessation, or that there is a cessation to suffering and the mental afflictions, and that the path that leads to this is the mind which lies in direct opposition to the self-grasping. So if the and so it's there's a quote in the text there where he talks about in order to be able to you remove so in order to achieve this cessation, there are causes which lead us to be able to achieve the cessation, and those it's actually stated as an galmeche which lie as obstacles or obstructions to the attaining the cessation, and therefore we counter those obstacles and obstructions with the wisdom and realizing selflessness. So this is our hope. The wisdom realizing selflessness is our hope to achieve this permanent status. So it's a permanent. The question is how to permanently remove the afflictions and the self-grasping, and to go completely beyond them. And so the wisdom realizing selflessness is our hope. And in the root of in Nagarjuna's very very well-known incredible text on the fundamental wisdom of the middle way, it talks about in the beginning he starts to analyze what it means to be, what kind of self, or what are we talking about when we're talking about the selflessness of phenomena. And then the first up to chapter 26, he discusses it presents a vast range of reasons to prove selflessness. And then at the end of in chapter 27, then he's that contains a praise. After all of those reasons, he praises the Buddha for all of these reasons. He praises the Buddha for this understanding of selflessness, where he says, "I prostrate to Gautama, who through compassion taught the exalted dharma, which leads to the relinquishing of all views." So this is understanding that we, when it says relinquishing of all views, what it talks about is by not individually relinquishing or abandoning all the mental afflictions, but by abandoning one root, the root of self-grasping, then we abandon all of the mental afflictions. And then this is the Buddha who taught this teaching, who is under the sway of compassion. Then I prostrate or praise you, and this is a kind of real form of refuge. So now we move on to the important topic of what kind of self it is that we're negating in this, and then we talk about the object of negation of in the selflessness. And so you probably, a lot of you've encountered the Dharma teachings and heard the phrase that all phenomena are merely imputed by mind. So how many people here, could you put up your hand, those who have heard this phrase? Some will have heard it, some will have.
Now, there's a very funny story I wanted to share. When half raised hand, half didn't raise hand. So one time what happened, it's just a joke. So what happened in one village, one person who was elected, but he's not well educated and he does not know how to give a lecture. So, but somehow he got a promotion. So now he has to do his job, and then he needs to give a speech, public. So he didn't prepare anything. And then he walked into the crowd, and then people greet him, and he greet them back. And then he said, "Do you know today what I'm going to speak about?" Then all the people say, "I don't know. We don't know." And he said, "You will not know." So then people know that he's trying to be smart. And then they request him to come back, and they had a plan. They will say, the half we will act, we don't know. Half we will act, we know. So then he came back and then he asked the same question. Do you guys know what I'm going to speak about? And then half said yes and half said no. And then what did he say? The people who know, please tell the people who does not know. His job is finished.
Ça, c'est juste une histoire drôle. À moitié de c'est donc, il y avait un village, quelqu'un qui était élu dans son village, qui avait une promotion entre le village de faire un discours, mais ne savait pas de quoi parler, il était assez éduqué, monsieur. Donc, avant de faire son discours, il était au milieu de la foule, il avait demandé aux gens de quoi il puisse parler. Donc, les gens disaient, c'est pas trop, finalement. Et donc, il se disait, OK, je ne sais pas trop de quoi on parlait, donc je me suis exprimé, il est reparti. Puis, moi, je me reviens, faire son discours, les gens de l'Ukraine se sont dit, OK, on va faire comme si la moitié fallait et comme si la moitié ne fallait pas. Et donc, il revient, il dit aux gens, je vais lever la main, s'il vous plaît, les personnes qui savent de quoi on va parler. Donc, seulement la moitié de la foule a levé la main. Et donc, il était finalement suffisamment rusé pour dire, OK, la moitié des gens qui savent, dites aux gens qui ne savent pas de quoi on va parler.
là都是姐姐的啊，这张个缺他们就多别打什么的，是个什么的的，做宽的那个样的，是就准备这张让着路的毛西，路的毛西个，安尼他这个啊，大个安尼你路了梦去，大个你路了梦呢，安尼查说你们都几个月吧的，拉扯完就准备安尼大。다게 니루로 몽베 깨제디 시원도 잠베 네 다스니 데이터 컨디치오레스 다게랑 신 컨디레스 현재 조치 원도 잠베 다시네 아니 신네 두다마와르레 레레기 아니 담에 되나 파원도 잠베 베나 지게 강사 따와 지부 정화베 동아레 제시 제시직 답 강사다 풍부 하대바마 임바 오직라 오직레스 오 타대바 말이지 오 타대바 토나 zembajigido ojigido tebeyina ani shine di zintobeina ani chasoño mo jigimi duse so 다 되네 되네 야 되서 rimpoche 야 바로나 아니 배나 셈잠베 그 잠데 원래 손다 배심잠 우마베 간 레는 리고요래 다 우마베 간 레온도 잠베 shine 아니 지기 가사스니에디 아니 템버를 두고 말해스 계제디 시에지 아니 라바도 오마 틴주비 따와 레온도 다 제상 최점지 또가 딱좀 써야 돼 오마 틴주비 계제 레온도 잠베 또베 따와 점레 또베 파 샤점레 마도 유중원에 두베 자원이네 요 말해스 하디 대정부 시부지 가르친 차고래 수도 점베 루다 뭐 담마시 마음발에 처럼서 년디시라 신금아래 제상가 마음발에 처럼서 지게 라마기시 매지도 기시 또 짓덤들다 페로요스바 아 기시라 소를 패베는 섬점이 제베 답에 기시 개바침부터 자침부를 예정에 기시라 건설이야 근데 쉬고야 돼 가르치고 요래 스랍나 제상가 루다 뭐에게 나로냐 아니 오마 팅규비기 따왔대 아니 하도 오마 팅규비 따와듯이 사실 사실 인비 좀 생각하려서는 우마 팅규비기 아니 이게 드라마와는 너대버 선선 봐 우마랑규가 봐도 따왔다는 밥도 준비 아니 아수지기 아니 다음에 지난 줄 라베 이나양 안동양 다 죽어지 라디도 지난 줄아 나 스도 코랑기 면에 요 죽어지 라디도 풍비응 면에 유스라고도 아니 홍보 인식을 그냥 직도스 홍보 응연의 유효성이 직도스 pena uma semzamba inere rangjubi inere adina lo la ya ani bunga tu sure re chena kansa se ki je di sigme de bunga ye rungbi na ro ne ani da sin de gu gu yo res de mena nga me ba cha ani cheda long ro gas de inde sambe 풍부하고 강롱경 면이 있고 그래 제장가 가래군이 열었을 남버시베 풍부용하네 열었어 남버시베 풍부 망보지 예배 나로네 답변은 남버시베 풍부스도 자청부를 되는 배나 니 고백가봐야 안에 남버시베 풍부 이게 남버시베 풍부디 지게 참바 털었다 니 개발 소바 들어가라 공원도 줄고 매자 되도 하시니 가르쳐하고 열었어 잠be 아니 봐 땜부지 남버시베 땜부지 열었다 나바시바 템부 카디르스네 니 로바다 참바토바다 카트 지갑레나 양고 템부신데 투니데라 엔 친시 나바시바 시지 지켜온지 셰바이니 가사이 직도 수구주점데 케용에 데 오마 틴주비기 마도만데 잠베 대조 참에 루디군 따고 저래 마도 계란기 단달 프레젠테이션 되기 가사 담에 루비엘 파샤 다도 다도 그래기 아니 땡부지라로도스 제정가 담에 통화 되게 미대 탐지 시계지 거마도 담에 통 아니 아니요 다도 진시도 스텝에는 개화차로 그랬어 어디기 아니 말하는 저기 단다 우마 틴주비기 따왔다는 파비가려야 아니 말하는 저기 마사시기 풍부로도 스파다 용도 데스타기요레 시두참베 카둘로드 똑베 따와 섬시레스 코랑 능연에게 지게지시서 치예요 말았어 풍불로도 스파밍 샤바 섬시레 생소로시 똑베 따섬 세된 계절이 시내려고 봐
And so, in relation to this, this phrase that all phenomena are merely imputed or merely imputed by mind, and then when we look when we look at the four tenet systems, so looking back through the four tenet systems, the four Buddhist tenet systems, which are describing various versions of the self, and in relation to this phrase, the Prasankhika school, looking back at the other tenet systems, we'll think that the other tenet systems are confused about the actual the way the self actually is, the mode of abiding in the self, the actual way it is. But of course, the central question with all the tenet systems is, what is the nature of self? That's the question that all of these systems are asking, and each of the tenet systems comes up, presents their own version of what it means to what the self to be negated is, what the meaning of selflessness is. So they each determine their own, delineate their own version of what emptiness means, or selflessness means. And some tenet systems posit a permanent, partless, independent self as the self, which is the object of negation, the self to be negated. And some posit the self, in relation to whether the self is of one. Some posit the self to be of one entity with the aggregates. Some posit the self to be of separate entity with the aggregates. Some say that if we see the self as one entity with the aggregates, then the mental afflictions won't arise. And if we see the self as separate from the aggregates, then the mental afflictions will arise. And then maybe mind-only school, but then really looking at the Madhyamaka schools, when they are really questioning, for instance, when they're discussing the person, the self, which is their question they're asking is, does the self truly exist or not? And then so the Prasangika tenet system, they said that all these phenomena are merely imputed, that they don't exist. There's no objective existence from the side of the aggregates at all. So what's in the near future? So what you should do is think about these questions and ask your masters and teachers about these things. Think about them, and then ask your teachers. And Geshe Dorje Damdala, who's a great scholar and a great scholar, will be coming here. So you can also perhaps ask him, why in the four tenet systems is the or the other tenet systems leading up to the Prasangika, why is it the Prasangika view is considered a much more subtle view? And then why the Vaibhashika, the Sautantrika, the mind-only school, why is the Prasangika view the subtlest? And then looking at the systems of tenets such as from the Vaibhashika up to the Svatantrika Madhyamaka school, where they're talking about their version of no self, is they still want to find a self that they can point to. So they want to find a self that they can point to from the side of the so some say that the self exists from the side of the aggregates, some say the self is the aggregates, or some say within the aggregates. But they're not, so for instance, mind only and Svatantrika Madhyamaka schools are not saying that each of the self is each of the five aggregates, and they're not saying anything like that, but they're saying that we have to find something, from within all of those aggregates, we have to find one of them, which is the self, and identify it as the self, otherwise the self will become non-existent. So they need something from the side of the aggregate. So for instance, Svatantrika Madhyamaka identify, consciousness but within, of course, there are many forms of consciousness. There are consciousnesses in our daily life when we're sleeping, when we're unconscious. There are states, but those are sort of consciousnesses that sometimes manifest, sometimes don't manifest. But what we need to find, if we're going to find a self within the consciousness, is a self which is sort of completely stable, not permanent, but completely stable in the sense that it's there all the time. So a continuum of consciousness which goes beyond the times when we're asleep or when we're actually unconscious. So there's the mental consciousness, which is an exemplar of the self, is posited by tenet systems such as Svatantrika Madhyamaka. But then the Sangha then say that all of these views are still there are views which are posited by tenet systems. They're not actually the reality, and that the self is in order to have a complete understanding of selflessness, we have to dismantle all reference points for the self, in the sense from the side of the aggregates. We have to dismantle all reference points, and therefore they say that the person is merely imputed. It doesn't exist at all from the side of the aggregates, but it's merely imputed upon them. So there's those forms of self which are posited in the lower tenet systems are not valid, and are not the actual way that things exist, but are things which are sort of created, sort of philosophically created through the tenet systems.
제장가 덕시풍 빼나 강사 스니데 강사 스니데 그거 아니 바람조려야 아니 이게 시지가 간에 강사 스지 주구주구지 매베이나 아니 덕시풍부가기 뇌네 고랑기 뇌네 아니 강사 스지 매베이나 아니 안졸려야 비기니 강사 피게도 슬라비아티 라그마르와스 제장가 두다 오만 저기 튕겨버려야 당한 좀 맞은 저바 치야지 아니 이 코랑 풍비 뇌네 강사직 시야로 원도 잠배 강사 여사 되네 강사직이 시고로마도 아니 계란 여사니 계제 시야디 미션바직 되네 시고 주나 아니 데메 된신 차로 봤어 계란기 여사기 고사 다가라네 계란 시제 셔기 여자 ngöni shergi yoza in kirangse geje sherago re ngege ngöni ngarang sinye de yoza ngege ngöni nga sinye de yoza e shine ya se de ligi yorba asje o dit jobale ondo jambe 아니 제장가 틴주비기다 제장가 딱 크도 발라웨나 디 남샤주도 크도 숨고 말해 디 제방고 제베 타마들이야 용야래 제장가 딱 크도 말라웨나 저런 소리 달래 제장가 홍보를 때네 여바당 홍보 응원이 여바니디 후야 시 친구 시부지요 제장가 아주 우메게 따완 장고에게 내가 초고지 가려서나 홍보 응원이 여바다 홍보를 때네 여바니디 야와야고 제 토요일 쳐도 그냥 좋다 리베 제바다 제고 거사 어디를 투지고 말해서 보다
And so here, when we're sort of looking at the person, so that what these non-prasangika sort of tenet systems want to do is to find a basis which you can point the finger, place the finger and say this is the person, but you know. From the side, but from the Prasangika version, there's no place within the aggregates to point the finger. There's nothing from within the basis of designation of the person, the aggregates, to point the finger to, and there's nothing from this. The person does not exist from this. Therefore, the person doesn't exist from the side of them. But there's then the other tenet systems sort of critique or Prasanga or question them, saying, well, then you can't say that you can't point to someone. I would say if that's the case, you can't just point to someone over there and say, well, there's this the name of this whoever, there's that person. You can't do that. You can't really talk about them because they don't exist from the side, from their own side. So if they don't exist from their own side, then the eye can't be posited. We need to find something from the side of the aggregates in order to point to it and say that this is the person, and therefore that their self or the eye can be posited. And I won't go directly into this now because we also have to go through the process of examining these situations with many meanings rather than just immediately presenting the Prasangika view. But what's happening here is that the Prasangika will critique those reasons by saying that what you're doing is mixing together the idea of something like existing on the basis of something and something existing from the side of things, and mixing those two together. And then the Prasangika system uses many reasons and logic and reasons to be able to separate out those two of a person existing on the basis of the aggregates and the person existing from the side of the aggregates. So he's asking the French translator if in French, do the words sort of on the basis of on the basis of something, or on something from the side of something? Did they have a sort of different meaning? Did they have a different resonance, or did they have the same kind of connotation? And they do get mistaken. She says, yeah. So all of us have to sort of look and see if we can understand in Tibetan how it would say it's from the side of the Gansek existing from the side of the aggregates, and the person existing from the side of the aggregates, and the person existing in relation to or on the basis of the aggregates, and seeing that, trying to understand whether we can understand those to be two separate things. So in terms of terminology as well. Yeah. Yes, if it's clear.
In English, how do you make differences?
Well, and depend on the basis. It's not so much can you verify? Can you verify that it's a person
from the point of view of the basis without there being something findable in it that allows you to verify it. Some marker inside it.
So Alex was saying that it's to do with a mark from within inside of the mark, sort of, sort of being able to verify a person from within, from just on the basis of the aggregates, or within the having a mark.
pedi nyeli shena ya yore pedi khande ju yore slam na thada lo judo ta ban shi chires thada lo judo ta ban shi ko ta to be ta pedire jejan thada lo judo ta ban de thade mene ju je ju chini ba du sharon korang mene sharon de korang mene patasne de yobe yena 아니 공부전에 타도 요새들 공부전에 틀도 선배 주디 새로 로그래데 그 타데 뭐 태는 것도 왔어 타 뉴라로도 왔어 뉴라로 주 가르친 거 했을 때 코랑 경연은 주 매바디 코랑 슈니레스 데 인도 선배 취 간지진이나야 코랑 경연에 샤런 것도나 딩 가처레스 딜라파 아주 바 똑배기 샤zamre 마도지기 코랑 경연은 좀 말해 똑 딱좀 세도 따디샤.
So here, so there was that question that the other tenant systems are asking Prasanga in terms of, how can you haven't got anything to point the finger at, but then the Prasanga then sort of returns a question by saying that if you're saying that and they're saying, well, the self appears from the side of the aggregates, so therefore the self, must exist from the side of the saying, where it appears from the side of the aggregates, so it must exist that way. And what the Prasanga is going to say to them, using example of the snake imputed on the striped robe, which is an example of the mere imputation of the person imputed upon the aggregates, is that yes, indeed, we can say that the person appears to exist from the side of the robe, but in that example, the example of the when the conditions are right and there's a striped rope, and we take that to be a real snake. The real snake appears to be a real snake, but if it was a real snake, if it existed as a real snake, then the closer we were to come to that, then the real snake the appearance of the real should get clearer and clearer. Of course, as you get closer, the entity of the snake is completely lost, and so it's actually the nature of that situation for the striped rope to be completely free of any form of snake, and therefore, in the same way that the person completely from the side, completely non-existent from the side of aggregates, the person existing from the side of the aggregates is the thing to be negated. So, using example, Prasangika responds to the other tenet systems.
세상 풍비응연에 대시시 답사회 주고달라 땅아 좀 마소네 가샤를 두사래 디 가자디 객마토나 가두인행 알아는 쪽에 땅에 가서요 곰 당동양 풍비응연에 지요 삼대도 대대회이나 델레테네 델레야 가르스 그래 땅에 라바 가지고 곰베이나 단도 안주기 등진 참모를 때네 차소냐모 못하니 참으시지 그래서 내일도 잠배 재산가 말한 저 참여하게 된다. 때 빠른 dawa chabegi ta tanda tenla phabegi umajube dege nanglo la ya encha changa mege chegi dame dhubirigba ta tanda arsa tanda gyulu juba doji semik tenzi sege tenzi di malego ngana la ya encha changa nyen la ya ngacha kare ka gogu yume de nyen la sewaji hakwaji eni shene ta rangshin gewa mebe tamja shaba sido zambe ta tenjegi rangshin druba ji yuebe ina se laptona ta rangshin druba ji yuebe ina ane rangshin druba drubu di rangshin druba yu kareli gebare ane dili gebare be ane tadebale gebare be ane jili gebare tade gebare tomale gebare pa geje shesama wujira gwa 제장안이나 rangshin druba da rangshin druba nga rangshin druba saben se 참말로 냐나 rangshin druba dutsedi 셰방고는 로고 요즘에 내가 정보전 데를 송고하래요.
And so next, what comes in the text is the sort of important, it's a crucial point about what it means to identifying the object of negation and what it means to what that object of negation is in terms of the subtlest of object of negation that is being presented here is it's things existing from their own side, from the side of the basis of designation. For instance, the person existing from the side of the aggregates. And once we sort of come to understand that, then we sort of we meet with what is the object that is to be negated here. And if we're not able to refute that subtle object of negation, then however much we meditate on, different forms of selflessness, but not this, but other more coarser forms of selflessness, then there will always be an opportunity for subtle self-grasping to arise, and therefore from the basis of that, for the subtle states of mental affliction, disturbing mental states to all arise. And so here, what Chandrakirti does is to delineate what the object of negation, and this first part of the chapter 6, he's delineating what it means to be the object of negation of phenomena. And here, what he does is use arguments such as the diamond splinter argument, which is an argument that examines the cause. The cause of the analysis of the cause of phenomena, and then looking at that in terms of what the object of negation is to be, and then also further to that, there are other sort of analyses about the object of negation of intrinsic existence in relation to whether things are one or many, whether they're existence and non-existence, and so this is a sort of process that Chandrakirti is presenting with. So he examines whether the inherent does an inherently existent if there's an inherently existent result, does it arise from inherently existent cause? What is the relationship between two phenomena that are inherently existent? And then it goes on to examine what the faults would be with having an inherently existent self or a inherently existent seed producing an inherently existent result. So this is all a sort of in Chandrakirti's text under the analysis of the selflessness of phenomena in relation to the object of negation of intrinsic existence. So it's very important. This is a sort of very crucial point of, first of all, working out what the object of negation is before we start.
Okay.
Right. To just fit that in with what I was explaining before, when you see this object, then which category is it? Does it fit into? So you want to verify. Does it fit into the category of snake, or does it fit into the category of rope? So to verify it, it hasn't been mentioned yet, but Chandrakirti says, well, you only can verify it from the side of the mind. Does it is it totally non-existent thing like chicken lips? Does it contradict when you get closer and you look to see that it actually is a rope? And is it contradicted by this idea that there's something on the side that makes it that you can verify based on something on the side of this object that it's a rope or a snake. You can only verify it from the side of the mind, but the mental labeling has to do which category do you fit it into, snake or rope.
Donc, c'est différent entre de discussions que nous avons avant, où c'est où concluons-nous que nous avons quelle catégorie nous pouvons vérifier. Est-ce qu'on peut vérifier un serpent en le efface d'une corde, ou est-ce qu'on peut vérifier une corde en le efface d'une corde? Mais nous, dans ce cas-là, ce sont deux types de vérification à travers la boutique. Et en effet, on ne peut pas vérifier quoi que ce soit, ou un peu plus de l'objet. Vraiment objectif, cette vérification se fait du côté du sujet. C'est-à-dire le sujet inclut tel ou tel instance, au sein d'une finalité ou d'une autre catégorie ou d'une autre. C'est le sujet lui-même qui fait cette vérification.
Mm-hmm. So on that kind of a stage, when you reach on that kind of stage, particularly in this presentation of Prasangika school, I think the person who meditates on the Prasangika sphere of the emptiness or the voidness meditation, so automatically there should be a little bit of a hesitation. If you meditate on the reality or the emptiness or the voidness of this cup, and then normally we are so used, or we have this familiarized or habit to say this is cup. But once you have this understanding or this presentation of Prasangika school, and then right after the meditation, it has a bit, you need to build a kind of a, due to the strong understanding of the influence of the wisdom, here there's a bit of hesitation. When I hold this cup, am I holding to the true existence of the cup or the cup itself? There's a bit hesitation there. That is the one beginner's sign of you are having quite a approach to this way of warm-up exercise.
En effet, lorsque nous en sommes à cette étape-là, il devrait vraiment se décider sur la chute de la surface syndicale, comme on l'a dit, une certaine évitation qui peut travailler de manière automatique. Une petite hésitation, ça veut dire quoi? Et que lorsque nous voyons nous sommes tellement familiarisés, tellement habitués à nous dire ça se passe, ça se passe. Et donc, une fois que la compréhension méditation vient, on fait méditer, cette vue, et au sortir de cette méditation, on va arriver pour essayer de reconstruire d'une certaine manière la trace. Ça veut dire que sous l'influence, cette sagesse qui essaie de comprendre, c'est pas on va regretter, il y a cette méditation qu'on va prendre une place, est-ce que je prends une place véritablement distante, ou est-ce que je prends simplement une place Et donc, si on a cette petite hésitation, il me semble que plutôt un bon signe d'une approche balbutiante de cet exercice.
So then, back in Tibet, one student went for a retreat. This is a very one of the best retreat ever I heard in my life. He went on a retreat on emptiness. So he went there through the teacher's guidance. He went there to do a retreat. And then after a few months later, he comes back and then make a prostration. So his teacher said, well, I came here to offer my realization. And then his teacher checked on him and said, okay. Then he gives so much explanation of how he meditates and explanation of how teacher's guidance, and then how he reviewed all this, that, and then teacher said, bring this thermos and pour this the butter tea in my cup. Without any hesitation, he just pulled up and it just earlier time he does the same thing. There's not a bit of hesitation in his practice. So then teacher said, I think you need to go back again and meditate again. because the person who come to the stage where the Prasangika schools were aware of the presentation here, it is quite understandable because it really gives you a big shock. That's what I call it. One of the biggest shock. That is more shock than there's nothing bigger shock than this in our life. Shocks that you become speechless. That's the real. You become speechless, and you cannot hold anything. So that's why there is a famous quotation by the Buddha Shakyamuni's the son Rahula. There's a quotation called Masam Jume Shira Parushi Maji Miga Namji Ngoni Sosorang Rishi Chuba to some Javion Chansa. So I don't know how to translate the whole thing. Single or French can the labda. Or the 동반얘기 렁싱 있어야 돼. 컨텐츠에서도 나가다고 유마다고 아니 소소랑 리스도 다 냠샤기 계제시에 돼야지만도 로 타니베기 계제시에만 돼야지 차원도 준비 신 저장가 마삼 저도 매바서도 군주비 셰바지기 니샤도 매바 저도 매바 든지 차원도 준비 아니 딜 때네 뒤숨 자와 탐지 아니 상계 고가라바 인지 준비 당일이 줄투야지 디레도 준비 될 차처로서 어디 숨고도 와 어디 인도 준비 안 졸려냐야 최탐지 그런 신카를 쓰도 남바다 버려서도 그냥 대가랑 게 가지고 쇼크 뒤로 봐 예, 사면 단다 잉글리시 나라 말씀 좀 해도 열어봐.
Yeah. And so this is a famous line in praise of Parasham Paramita, which says, beyond words, beyond thought, beyond description, in Parasham Paramita, unborn, unceasing, the very essence or nature of space, yet it can be experienced as the wisdom of the wisdom of our own Rigpa, or you can also say that this is experienced as the wisdom individually knowing, the self-awareness knowing, or individualities. Homage to the mother of the Buddhas of the past, present, and future. And so here in this verse, what it's saying is talking about the nature of phenomena, the empty nature of phenomena, that they're illusory-like and space-like and illusory-like. But this is particularly when we talk about being beyond words, beyond thought, description, etc. What we're talking about here is in terms of the meditative equipoise, the nature of reality, and not in the sort of conventional kind of terminological, conventional kind of world. But what they're saying is that this it can be experienced as a wisdom, this kind of wisdom, awareness, knowing things individually, or however it's translated. Some translated as Rigpa. Then on the basis of that, we can experience that, and therefore that gives the opportunity to to attain enlightenment. So the Buddhas of the 3 times are able to, it's described as the mother, but it's the mother which gives the opportunity to the Buddhas of the past, present, and future in order to attain the fully enlightened state. So when we hear that, we should also we should have a kind of shock hearing that this is all phenomena are, the nature of all phenomena is to be space-like, or beyond thought, beyond words, but space-like, unborn, unceasing. This should give us a kind of shock.
Et donc, ici, semblable à l'espace, ça veut dire qu'en effet, les phénomènes sont semblables à l'évolution. Et quand on médite sur la réalité, c'est semblable à l'espace, c'est beau de cette méditation. Et donc, c'est cette. Pourquoi cette réalité méditative, finalement, les phénomènes conventionnels, les conventions ne sont plus appréhendés de cette manière. Et donc, c'est pourquoi il y a un ressenti semblable comme une simple absence. Et donc, c'est incompréhensible, c'est inexprimable, et cette compréhension, la réalisation de la réalité, et ce qui permet à tous les Bouddhas de prétendre d'être envoyés, justement. Donc, c'est pourquoi nous rendons hommage à cette mère, que les Bouddhas, vers l'espace. Pourquoi symbolise cette illustration même de ce choc?
세상은 난가 세든 시간 됐어 그래. 당하는 줄. 난가 그치니. 세상은 난가 세든 시제도 전에 난게기 지기 데데데레스 데시마 보잡사요 말에. 난가 세도 토그리 까잠게차. 토리 매바 다랑도 샤야지레마도 난가 세도 전에 되는 데시 망고 시오지 잡으셔는 난게 데시 잡 신고 매바 다르와. 그래서 난가 데시 잡고이나 토리 매베 차 다가랑 샤고 요르마도 난가 세녀들 때냐 팀베 데시 잡고 되는 데와 니면 데시 잡고 되네 망보 데시 잡는 데는 잡아 되와 난가 요르슬라면 핑기요 말해. 난가는 데시 잡고 중우나 아니 토리 매베 차 다가랑 샤 세들리고 요르바 어디나시 최탐제기 아니 최탐제기 다 ndöme랑 신세네레 최탐지기 니로 오마데 간데시도 수도 전에 코랑기 모니니 루바 매바 다가랑 코랑기 취이르샤스 바데네가 좀 쉬어 도사다 디지 시험마토나 로로카도니 튜바 제선 줘야지 디지 시에주라나 테네송데 다이트네 로 년녀몽 쇼선 로모고베기다 등소니 부여래.
So in terms of here, when I was saying that the mind is a sort of is the kind of essence or nature of space, or space cycle, like the nature of space, then we need to sort of here. It would be helpful for us here to define. It's important for us to define what the meaning of space is, and there aren't many. So in the sort of Buddhist tradition, there aren't many sort of widely different presentations of space. What space that means. The general sort of way that is explained is an absence, or the absence of the quality which is an absence of sort of obstruction. So the absence of obstruction to something that's the way that it's kind of described. And it's not really of great benefit to go into any deeper and deeper sort of explanations of what space actually is. It's better to do if we stick with this. And then we think about the nature of all phenomena as lacking any form of existence from their own entity. That this is the nature of all phenomena, primordial nature of all phenomena, that they lack any kind of intrinsic nature or existence by way of their own entity, and that this is the suchness. And then if we don't start with this and this understanding, but mistakenly understand this, will cause a lot of problems. But if we can start with this understanding, that will give us a lot of confidence to follow a sort of correct understanding.
아니, 패진 아직 로맨은 다 쳐도죠. 패진 셔리부이나 되지기다. 로만 주방치 주지. 아니 동문일이야. 지금 나오만고. 아니 송주나. 아니 대다 냠내나. 아니 담아대 좀 된디 군들네 다도 샤제. 아니 다 나오만고. 먼저 로정체시. 다 동문일이야. 먼저 창조의 인스. 아니 좀 된들래. 인주주표. 다 로마를 주주표치. 근데 로마 당보디 직대시 답샤가 사발 비타고 쉬우죠. 좀 된데 또 시제 단 준된데 냠샤가 뭐 다다 싫어닝 부분이 와 사물로 제주도 냠바 샤하시는 건 쇼도 진짜 다 생겨요. 시고로 되냐마 니바데 숨바 시바 베 로마 찍을 찍베 타这些 자고 주는 토바고라면 돼 봐. 비다 쉬었다고 있어 봐. 얘네 로마 주바들 레디전베 얘네 로마 주바들 튜닝 리시 튜닝 잘 말하지 근데 저기 셰드 구조 땅 메지터 땅전도 주장 있어 봐. 근데 좀 된대야. 냠차 땅시. 다 렉소 세요아. 싫어니 왜 나를 된다고 치니. 다 고난도 상도 동반인 리시시고 잡송스. 이나이 이거 동반인 운에 그들에서는 고랑 통조들에서 고랑도 통보돼 다 대고난이 따와들에서 좀 되게 성도와 세상 텔레 때는 가르쳐 쓰도 전에 다 지게 제장가 아주 마삼 주메스 제도 매봐 삼도 매봐 어디서 해야 돼? 다 콜이야 덕시 중요해 콜을 시시자가 들어나 그리고 동반이래 그 시시자원도 전에 망부진 시시자가 들어이나 가고 싶지 어때? 언제 언제 전에 제장가 제가 좀 된되게 다랑 까나무로 봐. 제가 남다 지들랄로 계신기스 당에게 동반이게 따와대 땐라 파고도 선배 얘기 직딩기 깨라 맨다게 토는 얘기 시고도 마도 지게 동반이 얘기도 수제 크도 진짜 퇴에서 개요 말했어. 네 된다면 된다백이 로이도 시지를 볼 때네 아니 하고 해지래 마도 군주비기 리시방고 시잡제 된다면 컨트롤해야 되는데 그도 개요 말이지 세상가 아니 지달라르게 생기게 니게디 장도연의 장바면스 아니 니게 미싱이 게 장야디 다 미델레피아 dunke다 미들의 편도 영역처럼 장바이 송번다 신체시 단다 제장가 딜 식드 송번다 신 literally 식으로 인지게라 직문지 신기 고화된 현재 제장가 아주 동번이 얘기 돌려야 아니면 드는 그 사이에 열어봐 한국 송녀열 퇴섬실에 제약해요 말했어 동반이 토섬시고 이렇게 제약해요. 라고 토섬시고 제약해요 말해. 토섬 제나 남도 앞에 그래. 아니 동반이 있어도 잠배 거다 자도 주의를 대비인자는 또 공제를 세제 화상게 다와 무슬레 봐. 화상디 너무 산지비대로空着 봐. 이제 장고 좀 된데기 다와 때는 파원도 노스파용을 봐. 제정요? 아니 난다 샹다락시다. 어 샹다락시다기 세상과 대 화상 다와 디 양다와 멤버 대선 태워받아 삼방 공부 매베이나 아니 우메 다와 때는 팔도 메두 하샹게 다와드 마 차르지 마음발이야 하샹게 다와드 주 용베이나 용그리스 용베이나 이 얘기 로메나는 초도 줘봐 안 로메 까말라실라 덴주슈쇼스 아니 까말라실라 다다 롱den요반다시 폐체 안에 단다 공좀 통다 봤음 제지 아니 타마데 숨바들이야 타마데 나로라야 아니 하샹게 따와데 따와 로바 칸데스 유르고유메 대시 예우 지부지연치들 도와 어디 인도 잠베 다 단다 가르스나 제장가 말한저 덴번니게 남샤디 한또 지기 마신베 있나 이양 마섬 주메 셔라 파르친 세드 잠베 아니 대시 시레 제메 하고 공점 대고래서 해서도 코시리 어디 인도 잠베 디조양 모토 치체 이나양 우멘다와 퇴섬 제섭의 슈구들이야 아니 거로지 공진 자롱도 잠베 단지 라바나신 좀 된디기 육주 셰바나신 타마들 이제 가서 로마 주바디기 육주 그 다시 좀 만나시 제제 당하란 주의네요 어디 저기 저기 용화라 갖고 그러지 누구선 저베는 지금 초와 만다지 된데 연구 유서를
So here, there's a sort of his historical story about the Buddha when he was speaking about emptiness and the nature of phenomena. And he had he was surrounded by 10 of his best disciples. I think perhaps that Shariputra was included within one of those 10 disciples, and he gave them, all of these disciples, a tremendous variety of teachings on instructions on emptiness, and the way to practice it, and encourage them to, having given them the teachings. So they heard the teachings, and then he encouraged them to go away and study, contemplate those teachings, and then to meditate on them. And then, just as a teacher will, in a school, will give a sort of examination to their students, the Buddha then called them back to examine them and their understanding of emptiness. And so the first student started off with a vast, expansive, and very comprehensive, detailed description of what the meaning of emptiness was. And the Buddha, like in the Heart Sutra, the Buddha remained in a sort of state of meditative equipoise while the students one by one presented their understanding of what it meant to be emptiness. And each student one by one gave a subtler and subtler and more detailed presentation without any sort of doubts at all about their presentation, and subtler and more extensive presentations one by one until they got to the 10th disciple. And then that disciple didn't speak at all and sat there kind of still and in silence. And then I think that his some tears fell down from his fell from his eyes, and the Buddha sort of arose, let's say, from his meditative equipoise and said, just as it says in the Heart Sutra, so that's that's correct. That's correct. This is the Buddha said, this is the real one who has really unseen and understood the meaning of emptiness. Now we have to be a little bit careful with this, because when we talk in the verse about being inexpressible, the meaning of the nature of things being inexpressible, beyond conception, then we have to be careful not to think that means we shouldn't study or hear the teachings, study and contemplate them. But what it shows us with this 10th disciple is that it's actually very difficult when we're talking about a view which describes things as not existing from their own side. Then it's very difficult to start using all these kind of conventions and language to really explain them. And so what the Buddha is giving us here is a sort of advice or sort of instruction or advice on um, how to determine, sorry, what the sort of the nature of things are. But he also said that he also there's a sort of statement where the Buddha says, if I were to try to determine, to clearly determine or describe to people the meaning of emptiness, I would have to use many voices or many expressions or forms of language or mode of expression in the world, and it would be very difficult to explain it through them. So he said, but I haven't trained in all these different modes of communication, so it would be very difficult to explain it to them. But it's very hard to understand, to explain this ultimate state of reality, the ultimate mind, and the mind realizing this ultimate state of reality is very hard for us to put that into common terminology and language. But we have to be careful with the meaning here, because this doesn't mean then that we can just understand emptiness by not bothering to hear any of the teachings about it, study about it, and do any of the contemplation, and that we don't need, when it says beyond words, beyond thought, or inexpressible, inconceivable, that we don't need to think about it, and we don't need to hear about it, because this would lead us to a view similar to the famous the view that a Fashang view that was refuted by the great master Shantrikshita, who sort of explained that this view of not needing to you don't need to do anything, you can just meditate, you don't need to have any background in study or meditation, it was not the correct view. And we can see that from the story of the Buddhist story that are related, because they went off and did study and contemplation, and so the so Shantarikshita refuted that view, and then sort of made a prophecy that there will be in the future this view will arise again in the world, and that there will be someone who will come to continue to carry on the understanding that this is not the correct view, and that they will come to refute that idea of not needing study, meditate, contemplation, etc., to understand the nature of reality. And this would eventually be Kamalashila, who composed the three stages of text, three sort of stages of meditation text, where he refutes this view of Hashang. And so here it's very important if we really want to understand a complete presentation of the two truths, we not just go beyond the words and take that to mean that we don't study. We need study, contemplation, and hearing as a basis, and then to examine things, and then this will help. And then on the basis of that, we do our meditation. So this will give us a different kind of feeling into realizing the nature of reality if we do this. It's getting a bit difficult, yeah, it's getting a bit hard to understand. Creating a headache. People say they understand.
Nyegi mojiba dang madeba suya de dangzingi chigidu sewe kukabu nima chig ra sona tan di mena meta meba chirida. 다 딘디지 초 말레나 가투이니 go to 도에 직당 go 베야 직당 아니 디 소소라 자와시다 나가 통해 이 야니냐가 요래 제상가 디 마용 그 돈다라 제상가 가상이기 겐 컨디션은 신 제상 동반이도 시 따와 되나 파원도 준비 아니 고야 간시지려야 가와 연구면도 뽑아지기면도 confidence 되기면도 수도 좀 겐게 제장가 메게 심지 두배 가도 심지 두배기 기 되발라야 아니 당고게 영모죠 나마도 직설라 달래주면 너요 동조신 다는 뒤에도 nen조바이 공단나신 공부를 nen조바이 간도 공부를 수도 아니 묘몽기 샤베 껴대다 탐제 다 망타송 대다 탐제 관례 수도 레다 묘몽을 댄데서 다 레라는 갑자기 자차례게 다 묘몽라는 남샤베 타진 더 망부지래 다 대다 탐지를 까 대바 좀기 내가 매버 쓰지마도 풀을 때도 매버 쓰 도구 요소말을 가르치는서나 당동야 대계획이 사변이 하듯이 사변 가를 하듯이 되는데 아니 나도 좀 당진대도 하듯이 당진대 신유 매버 마토나 요모 타라 남자 스마게 되버지 되는데 선배 안텔이 인순체 아니 내저베게 당고레스 딜리지레 온토랑 아주 퍼스널 차다 베는 미지 용체와 미디 두자 시부지레 고마 야버레 시부지 라베나 워레 베두자레 두자레스 라기리 타베 두자 인사를 와 삼데 봐 얘는 딘디 고마 되기 안다란 켜랑기 비게 잘라데 고마 잡선다 슬람나 어따티 고마 점불이나 고마 도슈에 차와 갑자기 자고 열어봐 디나 신시증아랑 좀 이나양 아니 제장가 다 나오는 여바지 뭐마신게 봐도 최치야로 도와주는 여마데 다 나오는 여비 님마디 신비 님마데는 손데 최마셔 탑맵 좀 그래서 다 최치체 마셔야돼 심기 오라 쳐다 마트 니로라 쳐다 마트 세다 어디기 토네 다다디 내가 전부 잘 지들이
And so here, we if we so that's why I was asking you, is this all giving you a bit of a headache? Is that I think sometimes that if we just look at this subject of emptiness a little bit from afar, sort of from the outside, so to speak, then I think that then I think that at that time, then it can also appear to be a sort of it can get a little bit confusing and get a little bit of a headache. But this is because it's not in that sense from afar. It's not very personal to us, and so and so we have to try to get away from this understanding of go away from dealing, sort of engaging with emptiness in that way, because we won't kind of. What we have to do is understand that the problems, all of our problems and difficulties, come from the self-grasping, and that in order to overcome that, then there's only all of those problems, difficulties, sufferings, all of the faults and negative conditions all come from that, and that there's only one way out. And if we don't have that feeling that there's only one way, then we'll just get mistaken about it, and we won't have a strong sort of feeling about it. So I remember I related my personal history where I spoke to one of my teachers, and talking about how to sort of determine the real meaning of the nature of reality and emptiness, and that I didn't sort of have a strong feeling towards it or confidence in being able to do it. And I related that the verse 120 from chapter 6 about how the mental afflictions and all the faults of the mental afflictions all stem from the identity view, and seeing that seeing that the self is the object of that identity view. The yogis negate the self. So that the verse is sort of explaining to us that how the yogis deal with things in the sense that they understand that all the faults of the mental afflictions all the suffering, sickness, aging, death, etc. All of those things, which are the faults which are brought about by the mental afflictions, are caused by the identity view, but or they're the mental afflictions and the karma cause all those faults, and karma being kind of endless. Endless and difficult to exhaust, then we look towards the mental afflictions as a hope of a way of overcoming our suffering, and then we understand that needs to be done. Even if we're able to challenge each of the mental afflictions, we won't be able to only permanently eliminate it, but only temporarily. And and then so that we have the seed of the self-grasping is still left over, and therefore we have to sort of to counteract the self-grasping in order to help us do this. Then it's getting more personal. So one example of this is if somebody mentions that another person is sort of they have doubts about them being a thief, or they think that they're a thief, and you think, well, maybe they are a thief, but you're not sure. And then one day you're told that they've stolen away your own possessions. Then you really think that this person has suddenly become the worst person in the world, and then you will the situation will become much more personal to you. And so this is the kind of personal interest in the understanding the need for the understanding the nature of reality and the nature of mind that we need.
아니 다 주요 탐제 똑배 딱점에 슬라브온도 잠베 엠베나 아사스니디 공비용원에도 샹원도 잠베 아니 공부를 때네 딱점에 똑배 딱점 똑배 딱점실에 코랑긴거네 요 말에 슬라비아다 아니 타그달이야 주도 통바되기 똑배기 타그달의 주를 냠바데 똑배 딱점실에 요 그런 거는 요 말에 있어요. 또베 또베 따고 섬 임바 직부 직장레스 이나양 아니 싱오병니 줄을 예든 얘기 감사 와 세야당 아니 싱오병 그런 단데 빼디 싱오병 그런 매든 얘기 아니 나 가서로 된지기 주디 아니 또베 따섬 임바데 직부 직장레데 이나양 그 탄예도 여ደ 매세야다. 자시 태 메테세 니디 베데 개발 최고를 했어. 다디 인도 참배 똑배 딱버 쌈기 짬라 아니 자시 태세디 아니 다 반대 튕규비 투모메 나와드레스. 다 디디시 작현들이야. 아니 다 개발 전부 다숨 쳔메시 단다 디나로네야 어디 지름부치 송제다 아니 똑배 샤발라 라하랑게 차지 태바네 식당 등기를 치기 돈에 드시 잡는데 고물루루 지마지신 송반하신 드시 잡나게 방부지여변 나네 반에 상지자 부터버리더라 아니 르벤 시발라 아니 르벤 디스도 반에 나와줘 디숨기 파파 얍세니기 시드 고물루루다 파파 토메니기 늘루 투모모이마 또베 샤삼라 아니 자제 해쇼우리 세게 아니 우메기 따와인데라 아니 또바 우메 따와기 지기 또베기기 따지기 realization 기기 칼레 카슈디안 디레샤 슈망슈디안 디레냐고 레시죠 우메 따와 타도 까사는 니니도 다 저런 시기 가사야세도 다다 우마 공부를 세나로 숨튀는 거리 직디레다 가사 깔리 가보 가사야 디레세 다 직디레 제상 제르면지 그런 꾸녀고 싶고 봐 깔리 잡인스 걸 봐. 제상이 깔리 디가 잡인처럼 소 있다고 쇼서 그래.
And so here, in terms of the objectification and the person sort of talking about how all phenomena merely imputed, and that for instance, the person doesn't exist at all from the side of the aggregates, but is merely imputed on the basis of the aggregates. And so there's that, the person that is merely imputed on the basis of the five aggregates, and then the example that we've been looking at, the example of the snake, which is merely imputed to the stripe rope, in terms of them both being merely imputed, and then they're exactly the same. But there is a very important difference which needs to be stressed here, and that is in terms of the person being merely imputed upon the basis of the aggregates. The person is still able to function in a kind of conventional way, whereas there is, although there is no snake at all on from the side of the striped rope, but it's not that has, in a sort of conventional way, a conventionally existent way, that a snake being merely imputed on the stripe, the snake which is merely imputed on the striped rope doesn't have any functionality at all. So here we see a difference in the sort of conventional way in which things are able to function. So the examples work to a certain level, but not completely. They're not completely the same. And in terms of this understanding of things existing by way of mere imputation, then Chandrakirti sort of says that this is the view of Nagarjuna, and what J. Rimpoche says in his text, the illuminating the intent, which is a commentary on entering the middle way, is that there are only three great masters who have understood the real meaning of these statements, and not just understood the words. And those three are Buddhapalita, Shantideva, and the master here, as it says, which is Chandrakirti. So and so he says that these are the ones who have seen the results of the teachings of the two supreme ones, I think he says, which are Nagarjuna and Sangha, and that the understanding that although things are merely imputed, they still are able to function. That this realization is the most difficult realization of all to understand. And I think there are 3 points in this text of Madame Bhagavatar where I think Jerim Shirube Chandrakirti Kasasum Sina Jerim Shirube, yeah, Jerim, yes. So it's along Lubandi, right? Yeah. So he says that these are the 3 masters who really understand the word, the deeper meaning, and not just the words.
저는 제롬부치기다 깔리 쉬우지 디가는 경향이 있어요. 남들 오만데 차겠다. 저장가 제롬부치 라마를 띵기였으니 미지기 디 라반의 쇼, 디 냠냉 라반의 쇼바이나 아니 제롬부치를 태바이스 라바이나 근데 지지기 다 저랑 제롬부치를 태바이어도 야워라데 제롬부치가 깔리 잡살을 저랑 개개하고 면도 제롬부치 개 첨부를 했어야 돼. 저랑 뭐 개츠면도 써야지 차그러 봐. 내인도 전에 알아한 쪽이 초사립 장에 냠내 망보지 지구여다. 다 지금 최소의 내래 소소 게르기도 알이네래. 망체치 알아한 쪽 최최당당 삼로당당 망체치 가리용으로 했을 그도 지 생계 관련돼 세 탑시 땅야 제định 선도 지어다. 최 투두에 내려도 투고요. 다 망체지라 다랑 봐. 다이는 제르부치게 그도 관련되려야 아니 동행 제대로선도 자원이는 봐. 넘버 타바 세지 상계기 넘버 타바 되게 뒤에 초도 줘봐 대다 넘버 타바 직대서나 그도 계셔니 할람이야 말해. 다 깨셔서디 푸로 오늘은 당진 카드자 투고 두면도 델리아 쇼지 카드자 되네 타와도 제름 버시나 답에 쇼지 지게 남주 풀로 중앙지 인도점에 동번 얘기 따와 동백이 남샤들 굴리시다 중매봐 이나야 동백 인장 띵 동백 딱하면 인장 아니 자제 튀기리 세야 될다 저런 것이 굴리 쉬어져 버려 답에나 단다 별로 단다 들은 거상 로비네 차 저기 아 면제 표지 아니면 되게 빡빡하면 고고야 돼 되네만 빡빡 고니 봐 또가나 표거다 봐봐도 샵도 시제 배 꼬르페네 배샵 덜배 봐 균인데 근데 저기 근데 차 제제 배가 왜 걸려야 차 제제 배 또그런다는 것은 정보도 제일 유효 한두 상말로 가르를 쓰죠 전에 안한줄로 달랍자 가와를 교회를 쓰죠 계란주 깔에 잡사다니 깔에 잡산 또 좀 라도아세지 계란주 깔에 잡사디 그도 관련들 야시고 모딩에 손을 수도 얘기 깔에 잡사당 조사들 전체사디 아니 단다 능진 뒤에 탑시라 아니 등진 매버 쓰어바당 아니 이제 그런 그 의원이 매나야 아니 자제 태그리 세계 삼로딜이야 약간이 정도 선배 아니 신의 예 소사되잖아 네가 하지 세시 빌리요 근데 이제 선배가 저기 양 커도다 냠네 주마토나야 아직 마당에 라마니 브루를 개발된지 도와세 최나로 최체단라 디셈날 샤샤나 클리 그 미다 친구들이 잡았다 소소의 디테일 레터에 그저 첨부요 어디지기 연구자 몇 제로 붙이기 때 몸에 따와 팔도에 가사야 티니도 세디 아주 셈나가 해봐도 샤고에 지리
Donc, ici, un peu avec les différents.
And so, and also, this realization being the understanding of things being merely imputed, but still being able to function has been one of the, most difficult realizations to understand, to attain. And that, we have to understand what tremendous effort and hard work that Lama Tsongkhapa put into um, trying to understand this particular point, the not just that things were empty of intrinsic existence, but that they were dependently related and therefore able to sort of function in a conventional way. And so if we talk about sort of relying on spiritual guides, and particularly if we say we're sort of like a follower of J. Rimshi, or we take J. Rimshi as a kind of spiritual guide, then, and we say that we're, following him and following his teachings, and that we have great faith in J. Rimshi. But if we lose the incredible importance at this point, and the importance of trying to understand this point, then okay, it's good to have some faith in J. Rimshi, but we've kind of missed the most important point, that, or what was the purpose of all of his tremendous effort and hard work, and we're not really sort of fulfilling fulfilling that sort of, saying that we have faith in him, but then we're not really fulfilling the purpose of what J. Rimshi put all of his much of his effort into doing, by performing purification practices and accumulating great merit, and then and his contemplation of the Dharma, in order to the contemplation of this topic, particularly of this topic, in order to then be of real benefit, to be able to explicate it and help others to understand it. And so, he this importance of being able to, if we're following the Buddhist path, to be able to sort of take on the self-grasping, but not just leaving it at the understanding of understanding of the empty nature of things, because it was said that for J. Rimshi, he didn't find understanding the empty nature of things that difficult, but this understanding of how, because things are dependently related, that they can function, was an extremely hard to understand. And it said that when he was doing his purification practices, when he was offering mandalas, and the skin was pulled off of his hands, and that when he was doing circumambulations, that his feet were in terrible condition, and his prostrations left him with sort of scars from doing all of these things. And so, but again, what was the purpose of J. Rinpoche and doing all of those practices? And the purpose was to tame the self-grasping, and and particularly to develop the realization of the point that although to develop the realization that although things don't exist from their own side, they were still able to function, and that sort of difficulty was the thing where he placed all of his hard work. So we may feel that, of course, there's quite a huge gulf in between ourselves, our abilities of ourselves, and such a great master as this, but still there's a kind of encouragement to, we can understand what the place where we should put our effort should be.
Zuma sedu zambe be tsawani ne mede yin chi koyeg ninga yudu zambe ani di ju dagarang ya ani jerambuchi gi deshe kyomba yore ani pandan dawa trabe gi dagarang di kado dele ya ani demba nyingi namcha ma songchi kunzu demba da tandan demba kunzu dembe namcha hamogo be nguyon dele tandan dembe namcha nge to hago gore be dum jumzin be ning jum shibichi aresena Zumba yimba hago la nye la demba yimba hago kore. Demba yimba hago na ane zumba kare yimba sheto kore wasi. Pena midi zumba zun shigidu slawe na nye la demba kare resi, kechi tigru wasi. Che zanga midi zumba re la de on zumba resi lam na roya yoma resi. Nye la demba kare yimba kecha shewe na ane shine de la zumba wasi, kecha di shesa raga resi. Chizan di yindu zambe ane ngaranzo ki shetamche ki ngode la. 아니 오지그랑을 오니기 시고르스 군 단단배 오지고게 시고르베 아니 군주배 오 시고르베 아니 계제 니레지 아니 디니가 남샤다다 레고르 아니 다 사닝은 저 쇼게 다 디니가 남샤데가 마치로나 난다다 치료서 난데 샤샤.
And so there, sorry, I missed the point in the text when in Rimpoche's commentary, the illuminating the intent, where he says that this is there's a line where he says this in terms of the view of the middle, or the ultimate view of the middle way, this is one of the great difficult points. So that's what J. Rimpoche actually says in his commentary regarding the relationship between dependent origination and functionality. And so, in order to understand these things, we have to get to know about the two truths. And there's a common perception sometimes that there's only one truth, the ultimate truth, in the sense that people think often hear the teachings and think that the conventional truth, it's just it's all false. It's not really real. But J. Rimpoche but of course the great master that we're studying here, Chandrakirti, both say that there are, we present two different forms of truth, and it's important for us to get to know what the meaning of the conventional truth is as well. But in order to understand the conventional truth, we need to there's a sequence where we first of all need to understand the ultimate truth, and this can be sort of understood through a sort of ordinary example where, in order to know that something is false, first of all, you need to know what the truth is in order, and on the basis of understanding what the truth is, then you can sort of verify that something is false. So if somebody says to you, oh, that person is telling lies, but you don't know what's true, then you won't be able to verify whether they're telling lies or not. So you won't get anywhere unless you actually understand what the truth about a situation is, and then you'll be able to verify that something is false or somebody is telling lies about it. And so we say here that all phenomena have two kinds of entity, a conventional entity and an ultimate entity, and not just one entity, the ultimate entity. So tomorrow we'll start to proceed to study further the two truths, but we'll leave today here for now.
You can go.
Not bad. Offering the short mandala. Prayer, dedication prayer for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the land encircled by snow mountains. You are the source of all happiness and good, all powerful generosity, Tenzin Gyatso. Please remain until samsara ends. Pray for the bodhicitta prayer, man. May this precious bodhicitta, where it is not arisen, arise. Where it is arisen, not decline, and go from strength to strength. With this merit, may I to chain the state of the Guru Buddha, may I be able to place all sentient beings without exception in that state. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri, who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. It's a dedication that follows the Bodhisattvas. The dedication that follows the Buddhas. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by all the gone beyond victorious ones of the 3 times in order to have good renewal. and by the all of the merits that I've accumulated, virtuous merits that I've accumulated here, may the benefit the teachings and sentient beings, as particularly the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa. And then there's a prayer, and the prayer of Rimpoche too.
세상가 저러부치게 땜바 개버쇼세야지 아니 개버를 주죠 로상 잡아이 댐베 닝부지도와 댐베 닝부 가르에스나 단지가 좀 대시 잡대야 돼 세상은 되는 대시 가르잡요래 단지 세상가 저러부치 꿀리 가와잡이 스두선배 똑배 따와 잠라 아니 자시 태버대 네 깔리 잡이 아니 반된다와 타바다 뭐물로도다 아니 비도베 다 아야데와 아니 시발라 아니 가르래 얼르베 저 탐지 거진을 때네 아니 똑배 따와서 자시 태세야 되다 디 가세 내레셔다 네 깔리 잡이 세나신 재장 알아줘 딘디기 남된 안경기 다 저런부치 더부디 딘디지 매베나 알아줘 냠낸 칸디지 쳬베이나야 또베 따와서 자체 테스해야 되는 삼록으로 당가 말 재장 저런부치게 댐베 닝부치 디 차디고 재장가 디 대약 뭐놈 잡아이나 아니 고 가서 그래 네 저런부치에서 제제 이 신고서 그래 디 비치 바이스 디 리그마와 배우고 쳐도 봐. 어디 이제 공부시네 보여주래.
So in this prayer where it talks about, particularly about saying that, in particular, the teachings, the essence of the teachings of Losang Drapa remain for a long time. Sort of making a prayer for that from our. So this is not a sort of. You have to be careful not to think of this as only just others. That we hope that all of the J Rinpoche's teachings are kind of spread across the world. What it's saying about, as we mentioned in the teaching here, is about the essence of the teaching. So it does mention the essence of the teachings of Losang Drapa. So what is that? As I mentioned before, what was it that Lama Tsongkhapa made tremendous effort in trying to understand? That things are, although things are merely imputed, that they still are able to perform a function. That was, and how Rimpoche states that this is the kind of said the this is the sort of the most such a difficult point of the ultimate view of the middle way school, and this only through the kindness of the great masters such as Nagarjuna, Sangha, Buddha Palita, Shantideva, and Chandrakirti, that he was able to come to an understanding of this difficult point. And so we shouldn't take this prayer to sort of not deal with it in a biased way of getting J Rinpoche's spreading J Rinpoche's view, but spreading the view, that kind of understanding of emptiness or the nature of reality.
Yeah, it's like when you start moving, it turns to it works. I think maybe in theory, it depends on. I think it's more like this. You want your full? No,